Alrighty, so welcome to our little online lab here. I've got my iPad all jerry-rigged up so it looks like it's a DocuCam. So hopefully this works as we kind of walk through all the steps of the lab together. Obviously, of course, I wish that you guys were able to do this in person, but I totally understand with the circumstances being what they are. And I know you probably would prefer to be doing this in person too, but we're gonna go through this all together. So we are gonna start with part one, which is pencils and erasers. So if you want to have that document open with me, then we can kind of go through all of that together. So first, I've got my pencils all sharpened to the same degree. So there's pencil number 1, then let's see, this one is 2, this one is 3, and this one is 4. And you can see they're all sharpened to the same degree here. And I'm going to first draw a 2 centimeter long mark from each pencil. And so this one is my centimeter long mark for number 1. And then we've got our 2 centimeter long mark for number 2. Let me go ahead and go over it a few times like I did for number 1. Then we've got number 3 here. Actually, because I just want to know, I'm going to do like a thin line and then like a more filled in line for each of these here. We're going above and beyond. This is what happens when you have the teacher do the experiment themselves. All right, and then number 4 here. So we're going to examine these using the low power on our microscope. So I've got my microscope here. Let's find a nice clean slide cover to use. So we're gonna go ahead and turn on our microscope, get that powered on here, and then let me go ahead and make sure that we are in focus. So I'm using these bigger knobs here, and then the smaller knobs are for the more gentle focus. So I want to make sure that I can see here. Perfect. So I can see my 2 lines, my thicker line and my thinner line. So let me go ahead and show you guys. This is my little setup that we're using here. So you should be able to see, not the best, but it's better than nothing. So you can see how there's a pretty decent amount of, here, this is my thinner line here. Let it focus. How even though it looks nice and smooth down there, when we look at it through the microscope, you can really see like the different speckling. So that's for 1. Let's go ahead and just slide over to 2. So this, remember, is 2 here. You can see this lining here. It looks not nearly as speckled. It's a little bit more consistent. And then let's look at 3. Go ahead and get that lined up here. 3 is even more consistent compared to 1. Oop, that looks like a good spot right there. I'll focus in there. So there's that. And then finally, let's get to 4 here. There's 4. I know that the light glare is pretty hard to see all of the details, and so don't worry as you're completing your write-up. I totally understand that if you're doing it via the DocuCam, then it's going to be a little bit harder. But let me go ahead and describe just in more detail here, because once again, I know you couldn't see too much detail through the iPad. So starting with 1 is pretty dark, and you can see more of the crystalline structures as well as more of the just like fibers of the paper. So that's 1. Let's jump into 2 here. 2 tends to be a little bit lighter than 1. And I can still see like a little bit of sheen, which is cool. You don't think about pencil lead being shiny, but I guess it is. That totally makes sense. Then let's see, let's look at number 3 here. 3 is even lighter than 2. So let's go back to 2, and then we'll go to 3. Yeah, but they do look very similar. And then finally, let's look at 4. Looks to be the lightest of them all. So I guess the best way I could describe this is that 1 is going to have the most like black spots to it, and then 2 has a little bit less black spots, 3 is pretty consistent, and then 4 is almost completely void of black spots there. So in terms of for the answer for the first question. So going into part 4, so you can select one of the 3 pencils here and write a short sentence. So I'm going to just mix these up. I'm not looking at which pencil I've got. Let's see. A short sentence. Let's say, hello. My name is Mrs. Burns. Perfect. So then let's go ahead and look to see if we can decide and figure out what kind of pencil lead type that I was able to use for this part here. And so looking at my sample, don't worry guys, I'll have you look at it too. It looks to be fairly dark, but also patchy with a decent amount of those black spots there. But it honestly is really hard to tell any particular details. So let's look. Let's see. Some of the lead up here. See how it's a little bit darker. So I would guess based off of that I was using either a, let's say I was maybe using a 2. So let me see what I ended up using for this. So I was using a 1. Honestly, if I was writing, I felt a lot more difference writing with the different pencils than I do actually analyzing the different pencils, but hey, that's probably because I'm not a document examining expert yet. So for step 5 here, have your partner make a X on the small piece of paper, and I did that already. This one is bottom. This one is top. So let's go ahead and now analyze these to see if I can actually tell which one is which. So, oh, very interesting. So you actually can, I'm hoping that the iPad will show this in detail, you can actually tell pretty clearly which line is on top, because it looks much thicker and you can see the directionality of the way that the print is. You see how, so the one that's going diagonal towards the upper right hand corner, that's the one that's the top. And so can you see how it's almost like clear which direction I was writing it in? Plus it's a little bit more consistent than the line underneath. I think I might have changed the pressure that I was writing with. So anyway, so that's that. So that's cool. I never knew that you could be able to see clearly which line was the top or which one was the bottom. Okay, so that was step 5. Step 6 here, use your pencil to write your name on another small piece of paper. Well, awesome, I already have my name written right here. Let's see, so press firmly as you write. Well, I didn't press firmly, so let's do Miss Burns. And then we want to erase a part of the letter. So let's erase the little bubbles to my B. There we go. So it looks like that. And let's see. Examine the eraser mark under the microscope. Okay. So let's go back under the microscope here. Let's see. What do my erasure marks look like? Interesting. So I can't actually tell that much where my erasure marks were. My B erased really well, actually. Okay, so as we start up here, you can see the ink, or rather the pencil lead. And then as we make our way down this way, you can't see it. And you can tell that by just the fact that the light is much brighter. There's nothing to interrupt the light. So there's the lead, there's the pencil, and then I started erasing down in this direction, and there's nothing there. So that's that. So that's interesting, but it's not very clear. Like I can see much better just using my eyes than I can under the microscope to see any indication of erasure. So now let's look at that with a UV light. Okay, let's get this. There we go. You can see this angle, and that's really clear. You can like really see the B that was there beforehand. So let me turn off the light. It's clear enough, but I think that the clarity increases quite substantially once you turn on that light there. So that would be for number 6. I think it's a lot easier to tell under the UV light. Okay, and then number 7, use a pencil to write a sentence on a piece of paper. Have your partner do the same. Erase a word in the sentence. Try to write the erased word again with the same pencil, being as careful to write over the old writing as possible to see if I'm a good forger. Swap the written sentences and use the microscope and UV light to track down the erased word. Were you able to detect the forgeries? Well, there's me and just me in here right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write in my left hand, and then I'm going to try and forge it with my right hand. So let's see. What do I want to write? I like ice cream. I absolutely love ice cream, so this is fitting. You know, for my left hand, that is not bad, but I got a lot of practice writing with my left hand because I broke my right hand over the summer, and that's what this scar is here for. I've got a titanium plate and 6 screws in my hand now, so I can throw a solid punch. But so I got a lot of practice writing with my left hand, so that doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to erase the word like, because that one seemed to have the most personality to it. So now let me try and rewrite this word. And it says to be careful to write over the old writing as possible. So be careful, we're going to follow it. And you guys have the benefit of being able to rewind to see what they both looked like. So there we go. That is my traced version. And just looking at it right now, you can tell because it just looks a little different inherently. But if you didn't know that I had a trace, maybe you wouldn't be able to tell. So let's go ahead and look at this underneath the microscope really quick. Looking at the word like. So let's see. Let's focus on the K, because the K had a lot of personality. You know, like, oh, here we go. Maybe you'll be able to see this through the iPad, maybe not, because it's so faint. But you can see the line that I ended up writing right there. And then right next to it, you can see just the faintest little traces of pencil. Those little specks there. Those are my erasure marks. And so even though I was very careful to try and get it to be Oop. There you go. I promise, guys, I'm holding it as still as possible, but just the slightest movement has it's sending you guys everywhere. So apologies once again for the not as ideal way to look at this through the microscope, but I'm doing my best for you guys. Okay, so now let's look at this under UV light. And just like I said before, ooh, that is a beautiful picture. You can really see how I didn't follow the K perfectly. All of the other letters look pretty good. Ooh, you can see I missed a little bit on the E there. All right, so yeah, you could tell using the UV light there pretty clearly what I had written over. So those are all of the steps for part 1, and so you can kind of go back through this video in order to answer the questions based off of that. I'm hoping that I was able to give you guys enough details about each step that you'll be able to answer those questions there. So let's jump into number 2. Number 2 is much shorter, and I don't believe it has as much microscope work, so hopefully the little bit of microscope work that we do have is nice and clear since we're using a pen. So I have got to label all of my pieces of paper, A, O, B, and C. Okay, so using a ballpoint pen to firmly write your signature on a small piece of paper labeled O. That's my signature there. On the second sheet of paper, write your signature again, label it A. And then give your partner paper O, instruct them to place the paper over the signature and attempt to trace it. And let's label that B. So like I said, I'm gonna pretend like my left hand is another me. And so I'm gonna try and trace it. I think it's gonna be pretty easy to tell. Oh my goodness, that is shaky. Okay, so that's my best attempt at, oh wait, hold on. I missed this little tail here. There we go. So that is my left-handed tracing, and that is for paper B. And then finally for paper C, I have to forge the signature just by looking at it based off of paper A. So this is actually much easier, for me at least. Well, I say that, this looks much smoother than B, but I think it's easier for me to look at it than try to trace it on top, because then my speed and my rhythm are a little bit different, which impacts the smoothness of my line here. So then analyze O, A, B, and C using a microscope. Can you determine which signatures A, B, C are forgeries and which is an original like O? Okay, so I lied. I guess we're gonna do a lot more microscope work for this one, but we just have to look at each of these individually. So hopefully I can get that happen with little impact. So let's look at O to start off here. So let's look at this part of the M. I'll focus on that. So let me slide this over a little bit so we get a better view. There we go. So that is the M of my original. And then here is the M of my second original here. Let's look right here. So those are my two original ones. And then let's look at B. So B is the tracing of O that I did with it over the paper. So let's look at this one here. So even though the application of the pen onto the paper itself is the same, the line itself looks pretty shaky. But in terms of like microscopic differences, the ink looks like the ink on the paper from what I can see, from what I'm trying to let you guys see as well here. Okay, and then finally let's look at C, which was the freehand tracing here. And that looks much smoother, but still essentially just pen on paper microscopically. One thing I think is really interesting is being able to see the way that the paper is stained. You can actually see all the fibers on the paper a lot easier. So that is that. Those are those steps. So that was 1 through 5, and then 6 is for you guys to just answer then those 2 questions. So you, like I said, have the ability to kind of go back through the analysis of each of these in the video here, and then you can answer the questions based off of that. I would actually recommend, if you wanted to be able to practice through this part, to practice with like either a guardian, parent guardian, or sibling, anybody that you want to do this part with. You don't have to look at it through the microscope, as I had mentioned before. Just for fun, since we're here, let's see if we can notice any difference under the UV light with all of these different forms here. So maybe if I get this angle, I know that this iPad is trying to focus, so maybe we'll just do 2 at a time. So we'll compare O and B. It really does accentuate the sloppiness. See how smooth O is, and then B is got like up here all of those ink marks. Nothing that you can't see just looking at it with your eyes, but still pretty cool to look at under B light. And then let's look at these ones. A is another original, and then C is the copy that I did freehand tracing. And once again, looks much smoother if you compare C and B. Even they're much smoother, freehand versus B. So yeah, so that's that. Hopefully this video was helpful to walk you guys through that lab. And once again, I'm hoping in the future we'll be able to do more like this, and hopefully by then I'm able to perfect my microscope iPad usage. But anyways, thank you for joining me here, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you.